James, are we ready to rock?
Good to go.
We're going?
Yeah.
All right. Jason Lavin, welcome to the Passion Project.
Thanks, Mark.
It's very nice to see you. Thank you so much for being here. So as always, I'm going to introduce you. I'm going to go through the whole rigmarole to set it up. But first and foremost, where are we right now? Where are we?
We're at Sunset 17 TV and Podcast.
Studio.
Actually, we got a studio up front here and a lounge in the back.
The new lounge.
A new lounge.
Yeah.
Right next to maybe the most popular bar in Newport, although this is not Newport, it's Costa Mesa.
Yep.
But I guess we call it Newport for whatever reason.
We're on the border.
Yeah, on the border. And a really nice Mexican restaurant. We're in a retail location, which makes not a lot of sense.
But it's awesome.
But it's where we are.
So, and the reason that I ask is because without this facility, I would not have a podcast. Very, very unlikely that I would have a podcast. And what's your relationship with Sunset Studio Podcast?
My relationship with where we're sitting.
Yeah.
Well, let me tell you a story. So
there's
a lot to that story.
Hold on, just so you know.
Yeah.
We're going to talk about some of the really cool and innovative. Today is all about you, and we're going to talk about lots of the innovative stuff that you do in sport and business and community. So if this story you're going to tell me talks about some of those things, we'll definitely get to it. But if it's not, let's talk right now.
Okay. Well, let me give you the short answer.
Let's go.
This is my studio.
Yeah, that was the answer I was looking for.
So how's that? Yeah.
Thank you. So Thank you, Jason. Without you and your team, honestly, I probably wouldn't be here. I tried to do the podcast studio all audio in my garage. It lasted about 5 minutes. Murphy Cargus, one of your guys here, helped me get the equipment. And then I realized very quickly that I'm not cut out to do all the IT and the behind the scenes and the website. So you guys did my website, the hosting, the posting, the editing, all the stuff is all because of you. So thank you very, very much.
No, you're welcome. It's been our pleasure. And I should maybe do a small wrinkle. Murphy's a partner.
Yeah.
Yeah. He's. I mean, I'm one of his guys, and he's one of my guys.
Perfect.
So
I love it. Murphy's incredible. You got
Yeah.
James and Cole are amazing. And so you've built an amazing team. I think that's a big part of what you do. And we'll talk about your business and all the things that you do. So, but thank you. Because again, honest to goodness, as much as I would like to think I could do this on my own, I couldn't. I learned it very quickly. And so you guys came to the rescue. And there's
a lot to it.
There's a lot to it.
Yeah.
But the cool thing is that's just one piece of your puzzle. And I've known you for a very long time. And a lot of the other things that you do that has led to this spot and us getting together and putting you on the opposite side of the table, because you have your own podcast as well, and you're usually interviewing. So, but you look really good today, Jason.
Well, this is an interesting view.
It's a little different.
Usually you're going this way. Yeah, that's right. So
Super awesome. Yeah. Well, listen, I really appreciate it. You know it, but for everybody, the goal of Passion Project is my opportunity to talk to really good people that do really good things. And you certainly do that. And like so many people that have been in here, we talked a few weeks ago and you're like, why do you want to talk to me? Like, what do I do that's interesting? And I'm like, dude, and I'm going to share all that right now because the list is long. And I think that's one of your secret weapons is that you're humble and cool and approachable and very, very relaxed, but very accomplished. So it's that's why we're here.
Yeah.
Yeah, you really do like being on that side of it.
Your list is shrinking.
Let me know.
Right.
Not at all.
That's right.
So here's the introduction for anybody that doesn't know Jason Lavin. You are a CEO. You are a very sought after, recognized, and accomplished speaker, like national, international. You're a founder of your business, which we'll talk quite a bit about. You're an author. There's a book or two in front of me. A publisher. We talked about podcast studio owner, but you also have your podcast. You are a coach. You are a sports aficionado and a big sports booster. You are we mentioned the pod. You are a nonprofit creator, which that's a new one. I'm really excited to talk about that because I need to learn more. And you're a dad and you're a husband and you're a really integrated part of the community. So it's a pretty good list.
Those are all true.
That's incredible.
They all kind of twist in together though. So it's not as maybe.
Well, that's what
they weave in pretty good with each other.
But see, that's the key. And I looked at them as being very interlinked. Mm-hmm. One probably doesn't happen without the other. One probably is the catalyst for other things. But that's the beauty of the flywheel, right? And I think that's what you've created. And we're going to talk about each piece of that. Because again, I think that people that don't know you or don't know your business, it's irrelevant because this podcast is talking about high performers and tools and tactics and what got you from here to where you are today. And it's a really cool path. I know parts of it. I've watched fair bits of it, but there's a lot I don't know, and that's really the fun part. And as I say, my hope is that these guys, James and Cole and Murphy, learn something they're like, I didn't know that about Jason. I had no idea. That's kind of the goal. So it's a lofty goal, but I think we're going to find all kinds of fun stuff. So I'm going to hit a quote that I found about you that I found to be super compelling and I think shines a great light on the kind of person you are. And then we're going to go in and start the fun. Is that cool?
It's cool.
So I found this. You probably know this, but I love this quote. I hope someone writes something about me like this one day. So here we go. Jason is a challenger, a teacher, a mentor, and a gentleman. His off-the-charts intelligence is matched only by his uncommon virtue. You'll not meet a more knowledgeable person anywhere in the world around all things web, e-commerce, marketing, and more. But the thing that makes Jason truly dangerous, and I love that so much, is his uncanny ability to connect his technical knowledge with deep business insights that even his clients don't have about their own industries. How he does this is Jason's secret. Mine is knowing guys like Jason. I just friggin' love that. That is the best testimonial that I think, like I said, I hope somebody writes something about me like that someday. That is fantastic. So if anybody was wondering why Jason's here, that quote tells you why. That's why we're here today. So Jace, how did all this happen? So we're going to start at the beginning. This is kind of like, this is your life. We know what you've done, and we're going to talk about each one. Where did you begin? Where did you grow up? Let's talk there, and we're going to end up where we are today. So where did you grow up?
Well, I was told that we ended up here when I was 2 years old.
Wait, you don't remember?
Yeah, well, I don't remember that. I got some early memories, but it's 2, 3. I think it starts to get cloudy, and then you can remember a few more. My dad was flying for the Marines.
Oh.
So he ended up at El Toro.
He was a pilot.
He was. Oh. And El Toro was a Marine.
Vietnam?
Kind of, yeah. He was doing cargo, wasn't in battle.
Good.
But he was stationed in Japan. I was in Japan with him,
wow.
with my mom. And he was doing some Marine work, and he ended up being transferred at some point to El Toro, California, which is up here in the Tustin, Irvine area. And from the story that I've been told, which is what I have to go on because I don't remember it, is he got transfer papers to go somewhere else, and my mom announced that he can go wherever he wants, but she's staying here.
She's staying here.
That's right. And so based on that edict, he left the Marine Corps, and he got into real estate, worked for Forrest Olson Real Estate, which is
I grew up with Forrest.
A lot of people know
kids.
Forrest,
sure.
and Steve and
Jeff.
They're a local family here.
Oh, wow.
And he was working for Forrest Olson, and which was quite a big operation.
He sold to Coldwell probably 30 years ago. I think it was Coldwell.
100%,
Yeah.
right? And there was a guy named
unfortunately, Forey passed just last year.
Oh, yeah.
I knew them very well.
Yeah.
Unfortunate. All right, but I digress. Sorry about that.
There is a guy named Bob Douglas who my dad sold a piece of property to out in North Tustin. And when he was done selling it, my dad asked him what he's going to do there. And this guy says, I'm going to open up a real estate company. How would you like to be my first agent?
Wow.
So my dad worked for Seven Gables Real Estate, which is it's an iconic real estate local in Tustin.
Is it still there?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Oh, wow.
Oh, yeah.
Big time.
And I bet he worked there, 50 years.
Wow.
And I went to Tustin High School.
Got it.
And I'm a Tustin kid.
Gotcha. So that's probably, as we said, 20 miles from here or less, 15.
It's only
right
15
around
miles.
Got it. And growing up, what was it like? Dad was he a pilot until right? So once he was done with the military, he went right into
real estate. Yep. And we had I think our life was pretty darn good. It was budgeted, and with time and money and people and places, it was right down the middle of the road. I had paper out. I was 13 years old, 12 years old. My friend Jason. We deliver papers.
J&J paper delivery?
It was the register, yeah. Wednesdays and Sundays were awful days because food inserts on Wednesdays and comics and TV guide on Sundays.
Because back in those days, you were getting it raw. You had to bundle them up and take them all out.
Yeah.
And you're on your bike.
Yeah, go collect the money.
That's so good, though.
I learned a lot.
I bet you did.
I did, yeah.
You're a big sports guy, which will come up today. Was sports a big part of you growing up?
Yeah, I mean, in my paper out, this guy named Chris said, "What are you doing?" This is my 8th grade. He says, I just finished my paper. I says, "Come with me." I said, "Where are you going?" He says, "I'm going to the high school football practice." And I didn't know anything about football. My dad wasn't a football person, so I just followed him to football. And I fell in love with football after that. And so, you know, when I did my 4 years at Tustin, my only goal was to play football in college. That's really what I wanted to do. I wanted to keep playing football. And I couldn't figure out why a lot of colleges weren't asking me to play football for them. There was no internet. There was no 247. Anyway, I walked on, and I got some help from my coach, and I went and played at Cal State Hayward.
Where's that?
It's exactly
Hayward, Northern California.
Yeah,
right?
it's not there anymore. It's called Cal State of the East Bay.
Oh.
It's Division II football, and I did that for a little while. But then I realized that nobody was coming to the games. There was like more players than fans, so it wasn't as fun as I thought it would be. So I played my year there. Then I went to a junior college, and I tried to get another scholarship. I played for Rancho Santiago Junior College, Coach Ogus, and we were a really good team. I think we won I think they called it the Super Bowl. It was for, you know, junior college, but I didn't get any more offers than I was supposed to get. So then I went to USC, which I wanted to go to a big school and play football. And then I went to USC, and I tried to walk on to the USC.
How'd that go?
Well, I realized why they weren't recruiting me.
What did you realize?
Because I was weak and slow. I mean, I saw speed like I've never seen. I saw strength, and I just said, "This is, you know." Again, there was no internet, so the information wasn't as available. And I thought I was fast and strong. Turned out that I was slow and weak. Yeah, but I tried hard.
It all depends on the measuring stick you're using.
Yeah,
though,
I tried hard, and I just knew I felt really good that it was time, and so I obviously quit, and that was it. But took it as far as they let me.
Got it. So was that all consuming for you during those years? Like, was that obviously school? We'll talk about that, but like that was it. Like you were really focused on football and girls, or
I
something.
kind of wanted to keep playing.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know why. There's something about referees and scores and guys and practice and games and dressing up. There's just something about that I loved. I don't really know what it was.
It hasn't left you though, I don't think, right?
I still love it.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's
been a formative part. We'll get there. I don't want to get too far ahead of it. But so you go to SC, you're there for 2 years?
2 years.
So when you're in high school and you're doing football, is there an area of schooling that you enjoyed, or is an area that you were going towards, or was it just, what was it?
I thought there was, but there wasn't. So
Gosh, kind of like football.
I worked, I didn't belong there because I didn't have any money.
At SC?
No. So, and my parents weren't thrilled, just to be candid, that I had really free schooling at the Division II. And then junior college was not expensive, and all sorts of opportunities to go to school. And I picked the most expensive one on the West Coast because I wanted to be a Trojan.
Yep.
So they weren't overly thrilled with that. So I got a job, and I worked 40 hours a week all through SC. And so I really didn't like it. I thought I did. I tricked myself into thinking that I liked it there. But it wasn't until I graduated that I started working. And I remember the moment. I actually remember the moment where I said out loud to myself, I hated school. I remember what it was. It was when I was working at the water company, and I was sick. And because I was sick, I couldn't wait to go home because I just didn't. I feel like crud, right? When you feel like crud, you don't want to work.
Right.
And I look at the clock, and it was 2:30. I'm like, okay, I just got to make it to 5 o'clock. I look at the clock, it was 2:50. Look at the clock, it was 3:10. I was looking at the clock I was thinking, when is 5 o'clock going to get here? And I hadn't felt that way, but I had deja vu. I used to do this all the time. It was in class. I couldn't wait to get out of the class. And then I said out loud to myself at the water company, which was my first job, I hated school. Oh my gosh. But I tricked myself to thinking I liked school. Because
that was after you graduated?
Oh, yeah.
Well, sometimes we trick ourselves. I mean, in that part, there's an art to that.
I think so.
You got to power through sometimes. And
you talk to my kids, I tell them all the time, you got to trick yourself that you like this. You have to, because you got to do it. So you got two ways to look at it. So you got to learn how to like it.
Yeah.
Because you can't get good at it if you don't like it.
What's the Mike Tyson quote? Discipline is doing something that you hate, but making it like you love it.
Absolutely.
Right?
There's so much truth
I
to that.
kind of butchered that a little bit, but that's pretty much,
Yeah.
Discipline is tricking yourself into doing what you have to do when it's hard and you don't like it, right? Isn't that kind of what you're saying?
That's what I'm saying.
I think so.
Yeah.
Interesting. So at that time, you're working at the water company. What were you doing at the water company? Oh, I'm sorry, water company was after. What were you doing during school?
I was waiting tables.
Okay.
Yeah. So I was waiting tables. Actually, I would drive after Thursday. I would get done with class, set my schedule up where I didn't have school on Friday and Saturday and Sunday. So Thursday, as soon as I was done with school, I would drive down to South Coast Plaza Village, and I was a waiter manager at the Good Earth.
Oh, wow.
And I would work, Olga was nice, she was the owner, and I would work 10 hours Thursday, 10 hours Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, and make enough money to go back to school on
Good for you.
Monday. Yeah, that's what I thought I was going to do the rest of my life. I loved the restaurant.
You did?
I did.
Okay, so you loved it. You didn't love school because you were working through it. You loved the restaurant. What was your aspiration at that time, career-wise? Like, what was your degree or your focus? And was that a passion, or was it just, I need to graduate?
A little of both. I mean, I was a political science major, and I did enjoy learning about how all the different world's political systems worked. And we had really neat guest speakers come in. And just in general, I like to write. And so there was a lot of position statements and essays. And I enjoyed that part of it. But from a, I just think I say I got to get this college degree. I don't know why. There's a stigma maybe to not having one. So I just figured I have to finish this. There was never a doubt I was going to finish school. But then I was working at this restaurant for this lady named Olga Hunt. And we kind of had this deal where she was going to give me 1% ownership of the restaurant every year. And I was thinking to myself, gosh, in 100 years, I'll own this place. And so I really I was making good money. She valued my contribution. I loved my customers. And I thought after school, I would just go into the restaurant business.
So real interesting, Olga, that's a really innovative approach. You don't hear that very often, that someone offers equity to a college student working 30 hours a week. Now, it's a bit of a carrot, 1%, but still, what was Olga like? Was that influential on you?
She was amazing. She's one of my mentors. Just the way that she would look at the whole outlook of the day, the planning, the customer experience, how we make people feel. And she was only this big, and she was just so much energy. And she was just an early mentor of mine. And she just took a liking to me, luckily. And I was her right arm for many years.
Wow.
Yeah.
How long did you stay there?
I probably worked there 2 or 3 years.
And so you said you loved it, and she was a mentor, and she was great to you.
Yeah.
What changed, or what ended that relationship?
Well, my parents kind of got in the way, and they said, Jason, would you mind just trying to go to work in a business and then go back to the restaurant, make sure that you're not missing something, because you'd never been in an office or a business. And I said, well, out of honoring you, my mom and dad, I will try that. Yes, because they really wanted me to. So
what'd you do?
Well, I was short on network, and there was this one client of mine at the restaurant. His name was Floyd, and Floyd would say to me when I was waiting on him, he would always say, hey, when you're done with school, because he knew I was at SC, look me up. I'd love to hire you after graduation when you're done. So my mom and dad said, please go work somewhere. And talking to my friend, Jerry, I didn't have a resume. I didn't know how to work a computer. He started thinking, where are your prospects? Who do you know? Can you ask somebody to help you? I said, I really don't know anyone. But there is this one guy at the restaurant that told me to look him up. So why don't you call him? I said, well, he works for this water company. I pictured this guy like in the Sparklets van, like delivering jugs of water. I said, well, at least it is a job. Maybe I could get into the front office if I worked for the water company. So my friend Jerry taught me these things. I didn't know anything. He says, well, figure out what company he works for. We'll do some research on the company. Again, this is almost pre-internet. So we found that the company is in San Dimas, California. I wrote a letter to get any company data on this water company that this guy Floyd said he worked at.
No, hey Siri, tell me about the water company.
No,
couldn't do it back
right?
then, right?
So in the mail, I open up this package, and it's got all these things, including this pretty hefty annual report. Turns out Floyd's the chairman of the board and the CEO of the second largest water company in California.
Oh, that's Floyd.
And they service 75 cities. And if your city...
So this is municipal water.
No, but privately owned.
Oh.
So let's say a city wanted to sell its water system. They would sell it to somebody like this company, and they're on the New York Stock Exchange. They would acquire the rights of the water system, and you would get your bill from a private water company. Most electric companies are private, like Southern Cal Edison. They're New York Stock Exchange.
Yeah.
Most water companies are owned by cities. But there are a whole bunch of water companies that are run by private companies. And that was where I went to work.
So is that also the place that you referred to that you were counting the hours until you got out of there?
Only because I was sick.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I loved it there.
Oh, you did?
I loved it. Worked there 7-8 years.
What were you doing there?
Well, Floyd kind of adopted me, the CEO.
Can I stop you for a second? So you had Olga, loved you, gave you a little bit of equity. She was your mentor. Floyd, second mentor?
Oh, yeah.
Big time?
Yeah. And another gal there named Diane.
What is it about, just because it's right here in front of us, what is it, or what was it about you at that time that you think was intriguing to them, or they liked? What was it about you?
I don't know. I'm lucky that they took that interest in me. I'll tell you that. I mean, if I have any advice for anyone, is if you're finding a mentor or two, you are lucky, because they just take interest in you. They took interest in me.
Okay, so I'm jumping ahead, but what does it take for someone, because I know you provide this a lot, what kind of person, you as a mentor, as an adult that mentors young people, what are the attributes of a person, what do they need to have or possess for you to consider them the way you were considered by Floyd or Olga?
Yeah, so for me, I think I could pin it down to service. I had service in my blood. Matter of fact, I was, it's a long story, but so Floyd hires me as an intern at the water company. I become almost public enemy number one of the whole water company, because we got this kid from SC who can't type or use a computer, and Floyd's just hired him as an internship in this pretty good company. And I have access to Floyd because I've waited on him and his wife. Mm-hmm. And he doesn't know where to put me because I don't have any skills. So he puts me in the PR department because I told him I like to write. So I'm working for this guy, Bob. Bob tells me that we need to be at work every day at 9 o'clock. I get there 15 minutes early every single day. I get there 8:45. 3 weeks into it, Georgette, who's Floyd's secretary, comes up to me and says, Jason, it's one thing that Floyd has given you this nice position. It's another thing to have no courtesy at all and to be late every day. And I said, well, Georgette, I'm 15 minutes early every day. No, I watched you. You come in here at 8:45 every day. I said, I know. And she says, well, that's late. I said, well, Bob says we start at 9.
Oh.
So, Torpedo. So then what happens is
Bob went bye-bye.
Floyd fires Bob. Yeah. So now everybody loves Bob. Right? People like Bob.
Not Floyd.
Well, I don't think he fired him just right there, right then. But then that wasn't good look for Bob. But Bob ended up being fired, and I'm sure that didn't help him. And while that happened, he relocates me to the information. What did they call it then? It's the IT, but it was not called IT back then. It was the computer data information systems. Because they look at me and I'm 22 and I go, well, you certainly understand computers. You just graduated from USC. Nope, not true. So Steve Firth, he puts me in front of this computer, and I've never used a computer. It's got DOS, and I'm trying to figure this out. And I'm like, well, what's this? And he says, that's the other guy's file. I said, okay. Well, he says, you don't need that. You can delete it. And then I go, what's this right here? And he says, well, think of a file, George Jason. These are all files, and these are all files from the last guy that had this computer, so you don't need that either. You can delete it. I said, got it. So I'm going to delete. So the next morning I walk in, my computer won't fire up. I'm like, Steve, this computer won't fire up. And he looks at it, and he's like, let me figure this out. He goes, holy crap. I said, what? He says, dude, someone deleted your operating system. I'm like,
Wasn't me.
So what do you mean? He says, oh, it's getting bad around here, man. First, Bob, and now someone's deleted your
Jason,
entire...
I think it's so fun when I meet people or talk to people that have these crazy stories about what got them in. So you're a computer, I don't know, expert, but like your world is computers and the internet, and you started by deleting your own on day one.
Yeah, well, that's how it
operating
started.
system.
Yeah, and that's as low as you go. Like obviously I deleted DOS, not knowing what I was doing, and then Steve's like, I can't believe somebody deleted. He thought there's sabotage going on. Right. So maybe it was the next
Bob
day.
did it.
Yeah, that's right.
Bob deleted
did it, and I've already got in trouble. And so like the next day, or maybe it was 2 days later, I walk in front of the executive row. There's Georgette and another executive secretary. And there's the 7 VPs, and then there's Floyd. He's the main guy. And I walk up and I say, hey, Georgette, do you mind if I talk to Floyd? And Georgette just looks at me and says, Jason, you need an appointment. And then you hear from Floyd's office, you hear, is that Jason? Hey, Jason, come on in here. And then you see Georgette. She's just like, what the heck?
Who is this punk
Yeah, and so
kid?
So I walk into Floyd's office, and I could just see, it's just not good, Mark. And so I say, Floyd, thank you so much for everything. This has been an amazing couple of weeks, but I quit. You quit? I said, yeah, there's just nothing I do that is of value here. And I got Bob in trouble, and I just deleted DOS, whatever, And he looks at me, he says, sit down. And I said, He says, I'll let you quit, but one condition, you do an assignment for me first. And I said, oh, sure, yeah, whatever. Yeah, an assignment. He says, you like to write? I said, I like to write, yes. He says, I want you to write me a plan. I said, okay, what's the plan? He says, I want you to write me a plan on how we can make everybody here treat our customers like you treat my wife and me and my kid at the restaurant. So, whoa, that's a good plan. I get teared up. So, yeah, I'll write the plan.
Why does that impact you so much?
None of this happens without that.
Nothing happens without that conversation. Wow. Floyd's question when you tendered your resignation because you didn't know how to do anything, he saw through it and gave you a challenge that went right to your heart.
Yeah. So I'm lucky.
Wow. That is such a great story, Jace. Wow. And clearly it has a ton of weight.
Well, it worked. I wrote the plan, and
how many other people got fired after you wrote that plan?
well, he hired a gal that was really nice of him to do, because she came out of the Air Force, and she was a trainer. She trained, and we opened up the first customer service program for a water utility. Which, water, you don't have a choice where you get your water. You have to get your water from whoever is providing you water. So giving customer service training to a water company was unheard of, because it was like, you like this water, it's your water. Like, you can't switch. So there's no industry in training customer service for water. But Floyd wanted us to compete with Nordstrom. He wanted to compete with the Good Earth restaurant. He wanted to compete at the highest level of service, because he knew for whatever reason, he knew that was important. And so Diane and I started the first customer service.
But he was a bit of a visionary in that space.
Oh, he's so
to
far
totally
ahead.
shift the outlook on how to deal with customers.
So far ahead of his time.
Wow.
And we changed I frankly changed the whole industry.
So this was coming regardless. Whether you had tendered a resignation, and he just took it upon himself at that time to challenge you. But this was going to happen at the water company regardless, you think?
Yeah, he for sure. He was so far ahead of his time. So we created customer service for our utilities, but then we created a whole university to train, skill train. And a lot of that training was computers. And I got wrapped up into computer training. And, the internet started coming out, and I learned the internet just like everybody else learned the internet when it came out. And I would spend hours all night long.
While you were at the water company?
Oh, yeah, all night long.
So you were just starting? Okay.
Yeah. Well, Diane's husband was in the MIS department at Chevron, which was a much smarter MIS department than the water company, the oil company. And, 2-3 nights a week, he would tutor me on computers.
Did you see computers as a tool that you needed to learn, or is it something that you're like, I love this, I want this, or what was it about computers that...
I didn't like computers, but I told myself I better learn to like this because these things are coming. And so after I started spending 3, 4, 5 hours a day on computers, I started learning computers. And then I became quickly the computer guy at the water company. And I just knew how computers work. And then I started, at night building websites.
Okay, so let's real quick, maybe we'll close off with the water company. So you're still doing the culture and leadership training and all that stuff, but you're now bolting on the computer aspect, or did you move your whole focus over into the computer?
No, I'm still doing customer service, but I'm learning computers and making modules. And
so you're providing all kinds of value.
Well, Floyd was cool. He put me in every department, so I learned every department. I spent, a couple months in every department. I think, in turn, he was probably grooming me, maybe, to be an executive or maybe even take over the company one day, which was a pretty sizable company.
Yeah. Well, it's also, again, another big testimonial to you. People in leadership don't provide those opportunities to people that aren't working really hard to get there.
Probably, yeah. I mean, I was like right place, right time. And yeah, then working. Loving my work.
And clearly providing value, right? I mean, that's a big deal to change the culture of an industry. He may have had the vision, but you were the one that went out and maybe wrote the business plan on how to do it. And then as a company, you guys, again, I'm surmising, went out and made it happen.
We did. We did things that were unheard of, and it took off.
That's incredible.
Yeah, it was fun.
So you're learning computers, and you said you're starting to build websites at night. So let's talk about building websites, because that clearly is where your future went. So talk about that time. Still at water company or left, but you're building websites at night.
Still at water company.
Why did you start, or how did you start building websites?
Well, I was learning computers, and then my friend, my good friend, my friend Jerry, he was working at a company, an ad agency, and they needed a website for their client. This client was a submarine, a passenger submarine. It's called Atlantis Submarines, and they would take people in like an amusement. They can in Maui, Barbados, Cancun, and you would go into a submarine and come up, and it was $100 or whatever. He says, "Well, I'm working for a company, and do you know any of our bros that can do a website for this company?" And I said, "No, I don't know anybody, Jerry, that can do that, but I could probably do it." And he says, no, I'm working for a real company, and this is a real, and this is an ad, and I need someone that knows what they're doing. I said, I don't know anyone. He calls like 2 weeks later, must have obviously called and struck out. And he says, do you really think you could do that? And I said, no, I think I could do that. I could build you guys a website for your submarine company. And he says, okay, well, how much? And I said, well, it'll be $5,000. He says, okay, that sounds fine. And I said, I need $2,500 up front. That's what I need. And he says, okay. He gave me a check for $2,500. And I took that money. I bought my first computer. I'd already been using computers at the water company. I couldn't afford a computer, really. So I bought a computer, Gateway 486, came in the mail. And I learned how to build a website. And with my boss's husband's help, we built the very first website that I remember building. It was the first website I built. Probably in 98, maybe. 99, I don't know what year it was.
So you ended up building one for the sub company. Did you also build it for the water company?
No.
No, okay.
No, they didn't have a website.
Didn't need it.
Didn't need it, yeah. That's right.
Got it. Okay, so what happens? You build this website. It works, apparently.
Yeah, then I built another one, and then I left the water company because I met some gal at line at Dietrich's Coffee, and I wasn't thinking I was ever going to leave the water company. And I left to go work for LA Cellular because she said something to me that just kind of struck my fancy.
What was it? Was it about LA Cellular, or was it about her?
She said, how would you like to double what you're making? Oh. That's exactly what she said, which I thought was pretty bold. I said, well, you don't know what I'm making.
And this is just a chat with a woman
in line at a coffee shop, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
And so
I was saying silly things probably. Yes, and I'd seen her more than once. I'd see her on the way to work.
Got it.
So she was a recruiter. So I went to work at, she and I would run into her in the morning. We would talk. So she found me a job at LA Cellular. I was in the training development department. I was supposed to help with new hire orientation, customer service training, and I was really. It was a challenge to leave the water company until I found out it came with a free cell phone. I'm like, whoa! I get a free cell phone. So I had a pager. Was it
late 90s?
Yeah, it was late 90s. Yeah. So I had this, cool phone, and not many people had phones. And my phone was free. And then I was also in this up and coming technology, wireless technology. And then AT&T bought LA Cellular, and they wanted me to move to Redmond, Washington. I said, I'm not going to move to Redmond. So I started looking for a new job. And so I kind of resigned. And then one of the sales managers that came through my new hire, and he said, why don't you come work for me in sales? So why would I do that? Sales to me sounds like Willie Loman. Like I thought if you couldn't do anything else, you should go into sales. That's the way I looked at sales. And then he said to me, well, how'd you like to double what you're making? And I'm like, well,
I love when people say that
that's
to you.
the second time I've heard this. And I said, well, I would like that. And he says, well, come work for me and I'll show you how. And so I went to work for him in sales, and he was right. Sales was a good place for me to.
Also in the tech space?
Yeah, we were starting a new wireless data division. It's called the Advanced Services Division. And I knew as much about how the network and computers and low bandwidth, I knew as much about that as anyone at that company, because I'd also worked on SCADA systems and did things at the water company that worked on low frequencies. And this was just the beginning of what they called wireless data. It's called CDPD.
So a lot of this was proximity. You were in the right place with the right support and the right gumption to go after it on your own, to be learning at this formative time in internet technologies, websites, et cetera.
It happened right in front of me, and they paid me to learn it. I mean, it was unbelievable. Then I would sell it. So I would go to every public safety are the early adopters of this wireless technology. So I was going to every single police station, fire station, sheriff station in Southern California. I've been in most police stations in LA and Orange County, even San Diego.
Through the front door, right? Not the back door?
Yeah, right on. And I would explain, hey, you guys, there's this technology coming out where you can run your NCIC, which is they run license plates and stuff. And instead of taxing your radio system with data, you can offload it to the cellular system. And that was unheard of then. Unheard of. Wow. It was thought to be not secure, and why would we do that? But of course now everybody uses data for secure information. It's just very secure. But this was something that I was trying to describe to people that was coming. And we used to sell these modems. They were this big, and they were $3,000, $4,000, $5,000. And we would outfit all these ambulances and sheriffs and police departments. And those are the early adopters of the wireless data phenomenon that we know today as 5G.
Yeah.
But this is before 4G, 3G, sure. 2G, 1G.
No G.
They call amps. Yeah, this is a long time. So I'm at this at the very beginning. And I was making websites on the side, working for LA Cellular. They said, move to Redmond.
You said no.
I said no. They said, go in sales. I said, so I went in sales, and I went to these trade shows. And this another company, you're going to think this is crazy, but my friend Bill, he says, why don't you come work for us? And he was a manufacturer that made modems that ran on the AT&T network. I said, I'm good here. He says, well, how'd you like to
double your income?
Well, honestly, it's like everyone ganged up on me. And so I said, well, I would like that. And he says, well, come here and I'll show you how. And I said, well, here's the problem, Bill. I like you a lot, and it sounds like working at Sierra would be really amazing. But I also have this other thing on the side going, and my next thing is going to be doing this website stuff. And I've already got a small team, and I've got employees, and I've got.
So you'd already been building that on your side hustle.
My side hustle was becoming a real company. And I said, so I would like to work for you, but I'm not going to, because I have this other thing going, and I feel like it'd be disrespectful to work for you if I'm doing this other thing. And he says, well, you're doing the other thing now with AT&T? I said, yeah, but that's a big company, and they don't care. And he says, well, I don't care. Can you sell modems? So I could sell modems. Sure, I could sell. He said, I don't care what you do in your own time. Come work for us. And he was nice enough to pay my rent of my company because he gave me some web projects so I was doing some web work. It was getting kind of sticky. So I worked for Sierra for a couple of years.
Gotcha.
Doing that.
So the whole storyline is you were building your side hustle, which now today is known as
Golden Comm.
Yeah. While you were doing all this other stuff. When did it flip? Because typically in the typical business model, and if anybody could see, there's a wall full of business books in here. That's another part of Jason's, I think, passion. The whole main hustle, side hustle thing, the recommendation is you build up your side hustle until it outperforms your main hustle and it becomes your main hustle, right? Is that kind of what?
That's kind of the way I was doing it. You know, some people call me an entrepreneur, and I always tell them I'm really not. I'm a risk mitigator. I just work really hard until I don't see any more risk, and then I go that way. So I was building up Golden Comm to where I thought it could support me and my family, and then I left Sierra, which was frankly, a very good paying job.
Well, yeah, because you've gone 2x multiple times.
And I had stock. I bought my houses. I was very lucky to be at Sierra when I was.
How long were you there?
Oh, gosh. I bet I was at Sierra 6 years.
And he let you the whole time do Golden Comm?
Oh, yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah. Sales is easy. You know.
That's not what the salesmen say. Salespeople say that it's hard.
Well, I mean, sales is easy. Have you sold anything?
One or two
You get paid on commission.
Yeah. Gotcha.
So.
Wow. Okay. So let's talk. Thank you for that. I think it's super formative in how you got there. But again, the number one takeaway I have so far is whatever you have, whatever you possess, your work ethic, your approach, your view has been appreciated and adopted and sought after by these people that want you no matter what. Hey, come, I'll pay you 2x. Hey, keep your side hustle. I don't care. Come with me. Let me mentor. That speaks volumes from my perspective.
Yeah.
Which is pretty cool.
Yeah.
I mean, having, as you said,
It's
having
been great.
mentors is invaluable, and it sounds like you were fortunate enough to have some people identify in you something special, and they wanted to take you under their wing.
Yeah, I'm stoked. Like this weekend, I know we don't talk about current events, but I'm going up to Canada this weekend. We have a huge Sierra reunion.
Oh, wow.
I can't wait to see everybody.
Good for you.
Yeah, but I left them. Oh, I remember where I left them. I left them in 2008, which was a disaster in its own.
Yeah, because the economy changes.
Yeah, and all of our
good time to be a risk mitigator entrepreneur,
all of
right?
our business in Orange County, we had like 60 or 70% of our revenue was mortgage companies, because it was a mortgage city. You remember The Big Short?
For sure.
Yeah.
Yep.
So we got caught up in that right after I quit Sierra. The economy collapsed. I'm sitting there with a company and looking at Brenda saying, I really screwed this one up, but we got out of it.
Okay, but we're going to go into Golden Comm.
Okay.
Before we do, let's talk family real quick. You just brought up Brenda, your wife.
Yeah.
Talk about your family real quick.
Well, Brenda is my wife, and many years, and as I remember the story, she doesn't remember the same things I do, and I think she's probably right, but I like to remember the story the way I remember. I met her in 8th grade.
Really?
Yeah. She insists that that's a white lie, but I have a picture of it, so there's my information.
Okay.
Yeah. We were at the Washington, D.C. field trip. We were both in Tustin. She went to Curry. I went to CT. And the school district takes a trip to Washington, D.C. for 8th grade to learn about how a bill becomes a law. And she was a Curry girl. I was a CT boy. We were on the same bus. And I met all the Curry girls. And I said, well, you're going to go to high school with all these girls and boys. So you were all kind of meeting each other at the middle age. And yeah, then school started freshman year, and we were great friends in high school. Great friends. But we didn't date.
Oh, you didn't?
Mm-mm.
Okay, because I was curious if the family, because it plays right in. Were you with Brenda when you started out on your old Golden Comm in 2008? Were you already together at that time? Were you already building a family, or were you still?
Yeah, no, we got married in 2000.
Oh, okay.
So
she was along for this whole ride.
Yeah, she was part of it.
Got it.
Yeah.
Now, and you both went to school in Tustin, same high school, friends, but not together.
Right.
And then got together years after.
10-year reunion.
Oh, is that?
It was unbelievable.
Really?
And I'm like, no, how are you not hooked up? And so we went to coffee the next day.
And that's it.
And then
Outstanding.
a couple years later, we got married.
Very cool.
Yep.
Where did she go to college?
San Diego State.
So here's a funny one. I was telling Randy, my wife, this morning, that I was coming to interview you, and she's like, "Oh yeah, I've known Brenda since right after college.
Right.
And I had forgotten that part. So like our wives go way back. We met probably around this time, right? Which we can talk about later. Very cool. And you've got you have three kids? Is that what you have?
Three kids.
3 kids.
Yeah.
Are you empty nesters now?
We are.
Wow.
Yep.
I'm
Do
almost.
you want to do anything later?
I still have one at home. 2 in college, 1 at home. Very cool. Thanks for sharing that part of it. So you guys are together. How did that feel when the economy took a dump right after you went out on your own to focus 100% on Golden Comm? And you're married, and you probably have a kid or 2 at that time. How was that transition?
Well, it was messy. I was down at the HUD. There's a HUD office in, I think, Fountain Valley, and I was in line to figure out how I could freeze my mortgage payments because I had no way of making my mortgage payments because I had no way of making payroll because we had clients disappearing left and right, particularly in the mortgage industry. And it was just one of those very close calls. I could be here all week. How we got out of it, a big part of it was Andrew, one of the, like a brother. He lent me money. He's a Vietnamese guy, so he probably still has the same dollar. He had, and Andrew owns like lots of houses, and I've paid him over the last 25. He was working for me for 6-7 years before I came and worked full time at Golden Comm. I looked at him and I just said, I am so sorry, but we are not going to make this, bud. I don't have enough money to make payroll, and I've got lots of problems, and our clients keep losing us. And he says, well, I've got some money. And I said, well, that's really nice, but this is like a real problem, not like a little problem. He says, well, I have some money saved up, JL. I said, yeah, but Andrew, I don't know if you understand the magnitude of this. This is a real, and so he lent me a couple $100,000.
Wow. And
I said, there's just no way I can pay you back if you lend it. What if we don't turn this thing around? I can't pay you back. He says, we'll make it. Just let's go. And so I took the money, we made it, and here we are. So there's another.
I don't know Andrew, but I really like him. That's a ballsy, impressive move.
Nothing rattles Andrew.
Andrew is money.
Nothing rattles him.
So interesting that you referred to yourself as not an entrepreneur, but as a risk mitigator. You can't go through something like that and you're a full-blown entrepreneur. I think you're an entrepreneur probably 18 times over with all the things that we're going to discuss today. But going through that, there was plenty of risk. And there's always risk when you're a business owner, right?
Yeah, that was a doozy. It really was. Thinking back at it again, you have all these things, and your life's the same way, I'm sure. I think most people's lives are this way. You have these these teeny, tiny little things that happen that change the outlook of your whole life. I was starting to make plans, either go back to Sierra, they probably would have taken me back, go to work for any of the Sierra partners that I'd met, so I could have gone back.
Yeah.
I could have found a job.
If it wasn't for Andrew, would you have had to go one of those paths?
I would have had to. I was out of money.
God love Andrew.
Yeah.
Well, hopefully he had a good interest rate on that.
Well, he's still with me, he's still Andrew.
Wow, that's incredible.
Yeah,
what we could all learn from Andrew, right? He was working for you, and you took a loan out from him. That's pretty impressive, right?
That's a true story.
That's outstanding. Yeah. Wow, what a guy. So listen, in a nutshell, we could spend all day on Golden Comm. In a nutshell, what's your elevator? What do you do at Golden Comm?
Well, it's changed a couple of times, and it's changed again this year. We're at an inflection point right now. The internet is an inflection point with the introduction of AI. So what we do today is different than what we did even a year ago. So what we have always said is we make websites work harder. It's just been our tagline, our statement, which means your website should be your most productive asset. Next to your employees, it's your most important asset because it should be able to do all these things and should be able to outperform a team of employees, depending on how you want to measure it: sales, leads, customer service, efficiencies. Your website should be an amazing asset for you. So we would always help customers get their website to be an amazing asset for them. But now with AI, the way people interact in the digital world is just different than it was. So we've just recently changed to we make websites work smarter, because your website needs to tie into all of these different data points to be a smart asset for you instead of just a hardworking asset, but a smart asset. So we're really, Mark, we're Legoists. That's what we are. I always tell people, my company, we're just really sophisticated Legoists. We snap things together. Like you run a hardware store. By the way, I got a pie last night. So you're much bigger than a hardware store because I got one of the best tasting pies I've ever had.
It's amazing what you can sell in a hardware store.
Well, I'll tell you what, you were way bigger than a hardware store, but you run on, I'm just going to guess, you run on Epicor, probably, which is your ERP.
Yes.
And then you've got a POS system that you interface with, and I'm sure that connects to your Epicor. Maybe it's a bolt-on to it.
Yeah, it is actually Epicor.
Yeah. And
we're nerding out here, computer-wise.
Yeah, we're all these things. Well, good point. We don't want to get that. But my company, we snap Legos together. So regardless of what industry you're in, you need technology, and you need technology that is proven, and there's probably many components to that. And so our company snaps that together for people.
And what's your role there?
I'm the CEO.
But what's your role? That's your title. What's your role?
I still do sales, but I'm really in charge of the culture. Yeah.
No surprise.
Yeah. In charge of the culture.
Got it.
Yeah.
I read something, I think it's actually on your website. It's love helping big companies work lean and small. Love helping smaller companies compete with the big boys.
I like that.
I like that too. Yeah, I took it right from your website. I hope you like it.
I like that.
You also have the golden rules. I think you have like 20 golden rules. Like in my rule, it's like customer, customer, customer. We don't need to talk about all 20, but why the golden rule? Is that just part of the culture? Is that above every door and every monitor in your company? Like what are the golden rules to you?
They're almost like packages. So there's 20 things that we think that websites should do, and it's basically a checklist. And most companies should at least be doing 10 of the 20. And if you ask a lot of customers, their website isn't living up to the expectation that it could be. That's why people hire us.
Gotcha. Got it. And you're pretty big. Where do you have offices?
We'll have an office out here, and then we have an office, a pseudo office in Salt Lake City. We used to have a physical office, but after COVID, now it's a virtual office in Salt Lake. Office in Pune, India. Office in Poland.
Wow.
So those are the 4 core tenants.
And are those full service offices, or are they all in support of what you do here domestically?
They're mainly in operations.
Got it.
And so in the Poland office and the India office, they work all night, and we sleep, and we get up, and then we check work, continue work, they go to sleep. So it's a cadence for us.
Yeah.
In my business, Mark, it's really hard to run it's possible, but in my experience, hard to run a business like we do without a 24/7 cadence. Because it really takes a 24/7 cadence to get the speed that you want so you can get stuff to market. Although it just takes a long time if you're not working.
Is that one of your tenets of your business is fast?
Speed kills.
Speed kills, for sure. Awesome. Well, listen, like I said, you guys do my website, you host, you post, you do all this stuff for me. I wouldn't be doing this, and you operate this. So thank you again. And early, you did our website for Crown 20 some odd years ago. I mean, I think we met. You remember when we met?
It was the Business Improvement District.
The Crown Del Mar Business
That's when
Improvement
maybe we'd known each other.
No, I think we met there.
I think we met when you were interviewing for a web development firm.
Yeah. Oh, maybe. And then
Linda.
Yeah, Linda Leonard down there. Well, so we worked together a long time ago, and then this is just kind of the fun part. You knocked on my door. Do you remember this story? You and Brenda were looking for a home in the community that you live in and I live in. And I think you were physically knocking on doors going, hey, are you interested in selling? And I opened the door. I'm like, oh, hi, Jason. And I'm like, no, I'm not interested in selling, but you ended up buying a house around the corner.
That sounds like something I would do.
Well, you ended up where you wanted to be. But I remember you knew exactly where you wanted to be. You're like, we want to be between this block and that block and right in here, and we're going to ask everybody. You're a sales guy.
That's what we did.
Right? That's what you did, and it worked. And you've been in that house ever since, right?
Yeah, we love it there. We love it there.
Well, listen.
You moved, but...
I'm not too far.
Not too far.
You had mentioned this earlier about all the different things that you do. Has Golden Comm been kind of the catalyst or the driver for you to be able to do all these other things, or is it just one of the things that you do?
Golden Comm is the nucleus of my life from a professional standpoint, because I have so many amazing people that work there, and which means I have access to all these amazing people, right? And so sometimes, particularly at the high school or at a nonprofit that I would work at, or they sometimes they're just kind of amazed. How did you do that? And I tell them, well, I have a lot of help. That's how I do it. I have a lot of help. And,
Hallelujah.
And from an ad agency or a marketing company or a programming company or a graphics company, a Lego company, keeping people busy is important. It's easier to manage busy people than it is not busy people. So if we don't have clients and work to do, I certainly will give the services to the local community, because it's just good work,
Yeah.
It's just good work.
That's great. Well, and that's a big part, and I think we're going to get there in a minute. Let me ask you this. Have you, based on your career and what you've done and the influences you have you become Floyd or Olga to people in your industry or in your business?
That's a good question. I hope so. I wish so. I hope so. I have to think about that.
Is it important to you to try to be a mentor
It is.
like
It
you
is.
had?
Yeah. Yeah. So the answer is yes. I love seeing young people do well.
Okay, and that will come up in a few minutes when we talk about another piece. Well, and actually, let's bring that right in right now. So you talked a lot about football and sport and loving it. Talk about the role sport has played in your adult life.
Well, as an adult, I stopped playing sports, competitive sports, just because of injuries, and
Yeah,
I don't want to talk about middle-aged men stuff, but now I do tame things. But I'm done with burst speed. I'm done running as fast as I can. I'm done with that. But I was fortunate to have, for me, athletics was such a big deal in my life. And Brenda, we had 3 kids who enjoyed sports, and so all 3 of them let me coach them, which was really nice of them. And from what I could tell, they didn't mind me coaching them. So I coached all of the kids' sports, just like other dads that you see coaching.
What sports?
Soccer, football, baseball. My daughter's a rower, so I tapped out there because I know nothing about rowing. So I should have called you. She's at the NAC. She's now at Tennessee. She's still rowing.
Good for her.
So I didn't get it. I could coach her in soccer, but not rowing. And so yeah, baseball, football, once even basketball. Oh, flag football for girls.
And it's
Yeah.
Can we? Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Anybody around here knows that you've been super passionately involved and very involved in the booster side of things as well. And I think you've taken the skills that you have and you apply it to everything in your life. Is the way it seems. Like it seems like it's the old how you do one thing is how you do everything. Like it looks that way. Can you tell the story about what you guys did during COVID out in a field, like Field of Dreams like story?
Yeah.
Are you allowed to talk about it? Nobody's
No,
going to come arrest you now.
I can tell you about it.
It's an incredible, I only know a bit of it, but it was an incredible story when I learned a little bit about it.
Yeah. Well, COVID really affected everybody, and it affected everybody differently. And it certainly affected, it's good music.
It's pumping.
It affected the high schools. Particularly, they shut them down in California. And a lot of states didn't shut down, but a lot of states didn't have as many people as California has. You have 40 million people in this state, which is more people than you have in Nebraska or somewhere else, right? So I'm not making excuses for shutting down. I don't think they should have shut down the high schools, but you're in the middle of it all. Safety is important, and they decided to shut down the high schools, so that was fine. That means the sports are shut down. And from what I could tell, and what most people now could tell, is that this virus didn't really affect young people in sense of them getting COVID and dying.
Hindsight's pretty cool, right?
Yeah, but during the time, they didn't know. Nobody knew.
Yep.
And so my son was a quarterback at Newport, and if you've ever met a quarterback's dad, those are bad people to be around sometimes, because quarterback's dads can get large egos.
Intense.
They can. If you talk to quarterback's dad, you can usually spot one. I try not to be one, but I was a quarterback's dad, and so I'm like, well, what do you mean my son's not going to be able to play his senior year at Harbor, which I used to take Cole to the stadium when he was a kid. I said, you're going to play football here one day, watch. And then there it was. In his senior year, there was going to be no football. So we got out a map, and I said, Cole, these are the places they're playing football. Where do you want to go? And we picked Utah. So him and I moved to Utah.
Hold on, what?
Yeah, we moved to Utah.
I did not know this.
Just me and him. My wife and other 2 kids, they stayed here. But we got an address and moved, and I enrolled him in Brighton High School. And then he walked onto the football team right when the season was starting as a new student. And I said, go walk on and play football there, because they're not playing in California.
Wow.
And so turns out that wasn't you couldn't outrun the virus. We couldn't outrun it, because he'd come home every day and I'd say, well, why don't you go hang out with your friends? He says, Dad, I don't have any friends. I said, well, aren't any of your football guys in your classroom? He says, I don't know. I said, well, how do you not know? He says, Dad, everyone's got a mask on. So I don't know. I mean, maybe, but you're not even allowed to talk to people. So even though we were playing football and he was playing football and he was enjoying a little bit exercising, playing Friday nights, and he had a decent little season there in Brighton, we still couldn't outrun it. It just wasn't great. So after the season ended, we moved back, and turns out nobody was still playing any sports. So there was a guy out in Corona, and his name was Jordan Campbell. And Jordan has this youth educational system called Winner's Circle. And he was starting a league out in the middle of nowhere. And I got wind of it.
Yeah, this is the story. Okay, this is where I didn't know Nebraska. This is where I'm starting. Okay.
Yeah, so he started this thing out in the middle of nowhere. And he had mowed down this cornfield. And I went out there to check it out. And I met him. And I'm like, show me what you're doing. And I remember he was laying turf. And all these people were working their butts off, and the turf was like 2 or 3 different colors, because maybe they couldn't find enough turf of the same color. I'm like, what's going on? They're building a football field.
Yeah, Field of Dreams.
Out
football.
in the middle of unincorporated Corona. So I came back from that, and I called every single coach in the area, seven coaches, Edison High School, Corona Del Mar High School, Fountain Valley, all the schools that are around Newport. And I said, we're going to put together a football team. So send me your seniors that want to play football their senior year, and we're gonna get an underground speakeasy football club. And so, long story short, we got 57 kids together, and we had our first practice on Christmas Eve, 2020, and we put together a team, and so did others, and we met out in unincorporated Corona. And on January 2nd, 2021. I'm sure we were the only football game in the entire country. We were playing full-fledged tackle football in the middle of a cornfield. And Jordan's really the hero in that. Jordan Campbell. I don't know him that well. I should look him up. He's the one that really put it on, and we were a cog in that. So we created a team out here with the 7 high schools.
How long did that go on for?
We played 6 games, so it went on for 6-7 weeks.
How stinking cool.
It was rad.
That's such a great... I love the innovation and and it's a ballsy move, but it's just it's straight out of a movie.
They should make a movie out of it. Jordan should make a movie.
You got to get Jordan on your podcast.
I got to get Jordan on the podcast.
What a great story.
Yeah.
But I think that is just one aspect of the sports stuff. I know there's more coming up. You know what? Let's keep going to sports. Let's talk about this new nonprofit you have going.
Yeah, it's called California Rewind.
Tell us more. This is relatively new. And you've told me you gave me kind of the highlight reel, but tell us what that is and why.
Well, it started with this cornfield, this football program. When schools reopened, I had met friends with all of these kids with this football program, this underground football program. So I said, well, let's keep covering them. And so we started a podcast. I wasn't in the podcast, but I hired 2 guys to start a podcast, and we would cover the high school football scene. And we would cover these kids that we'd met, and we would just keep track of the local high school football scene. And it got pretty darn popular. And it got more popular and more popular and more popular. And then, so I rented the studio right here. And I said, let's just rent this studio and let's keep this going. Plus, my clients at Golden Comm will probably want to be doing these podcasts.
And other dorks from the community.
And other guys from the community that want to interview people. And so that's how it all started. And we've been doing high school football podcasting under this umbrella called Sunset Rewind. There are going to be a lot of names that might confuse people. But after about 4 or 5 years of doing that, it just dawned on me that parents, community, teachers, kids. Oh my gosh, kids love this stuff. And so I got with the two principals here locally, which is Bolton over at Harbor and Haley over at CDM and a couple other people. And we formed a nonprofit that's now an educational nonprofit. And we're going to try to cover all 19 sports from all of these local schools with podcasting coverage, highlights, and give these kids just great exposure on what God's given them, these talents to go out and compete, whether it's a lacrosse game or a wrestling match or a football game or a baseball game or a field hockey game. You know, all these kids have parents and neighbors, and they love to compete, and we love watching them compete. So the vision is to cover all of these sports. And how are we going to do that? Well, we're going to do that by offering a class at these schools that teach the 6 things that we do to cover, you know, video, media, writing, stats, analytics, social media, all these things that we do to put on a sports podcast. And you know, the vision is that 7th period at these schools will have 20 kids in it, and we'll teach them to go out to the tennis match, and they'll have a quota so that we'll get the data coming from the kids. We'll review it as adults. We'll publish it and create a way of covering all of these kids' sports games, but teaching all these skills during 7th period, and they'll get high school credit through this, you know, regional occupational center. And we'll become this awesome way of teaching kids technical skills and reinventing the way high school sports are covered.
That's so awesome.
Did that make any sense?
Yeah, it's beautiful. But there's more to it because that's what they learn through it. But you mentioned that kids love this.
Oh.
What do kids love about it?
You know, I think kids love being watched. I do. I think kids love they love to know that people are watching. And I think that does so much for their mental positive attitude when we watch kids and we say, I see you working hard. I see the effort you're putting in. And I think it's important that we say that to our kids. And I think when kids hear that, it just fills them with more energy to work even harder at their craft. Whether that's sports in this case, or whether that's art, or whether that's, you know, engineering. You know, when they have mentors and adults that say, I'm watching you and I can see how hard you're working, I think they like that. So that's what the podcast and the coverage does.
That's so cool. Good for you.
It is cool.
You told me a story about a high school gal. I don't remember what sport. One of the things you kind of shined a light on for me was when you originally told me about it. And that's when I'm like, Jason, we got to talk about this on screen. You said, one of the things you said was, you know, if you play football, there's a lot of eyeballs on you. But if you're playing a lot of these other sports, there's not people watching tennis very often or watching field hockey or these other ones. And you talked about a gal that played on one of those sports. And I think her mother called you and said something. Do you remember what I'm talking about?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. No, well, we've tried to reach out because, you know, this has been a football podcast for years. And as there's 19 sports that are played by boys and girls in high schools out here. So, and we're just getting started with these 19 sports, right? But we started covering just random sports from schools that are around the area, and let's just say a volleyball game at Marina High School, maybe. And we would cover them just like we would cover the football game. And I would get letters. The host of the podcast would, not me, but they would show me these letters, and they would say, you know, my kid's a completely different kid. Thank you for covering the game. Do you know how many games that she's been covered? 0. And you filmed her and interviewed her, and they're like, she's a completely different kid. Thank you so much. I'm like, we're doing the right thing.
100%.
Yeah, we're doing the right thing.
That's got to feel so good.
It does feel good.
It's great, and it's gaining attention. I think you had told me that there's now some funding. You have some. What's the future goal?
Well, the future goal is that this is a functioning nonprofit that is self-funded, that gets money from private grants, sponsors, and also one day state money, because it's going to be part of the curriculum at the high school. And that's all possible. Those are not pie in the sky. Like, it can happen. We've already got great funding from one private donor, which was like earth moving for us. we got a good size donation from a company locally.
But the thesis that works here works anywhere.
There's no doubt. As soon as we get these, there's 7 schools that we're working on. It's going to take us a year or 2 or 3, particularly get the state approval to get the courses and the curriculum moving. This is a very file save as Lego chip that any cluster of schools could do.
And is that, do you hope, do you think that that's where this goes?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Nationwide, potentially?
Well, we call it California Rewind, but there's no reason why
Nebraska
another state
Rewind,
could do it. Yeah,
right?
sure. The rules will be different on the curriculum. So we kind of
but the concept's the same.
Oh, for sure.
It's a really innovative, beautiful concept, and I think you nailed why it's so important. Kids get the attention, the positive attention and the feedback, and they feel seen, and they learn the skills at the same time. So like you're touching all these different people, even if you're not in sports, but if you're working on the other side, if you're the reporter or the podcaster or like, right, there's so many people.
Mark, there's so much to it, and you're really sharp because you're seeing these things that it's hard to see, because the part that's not being mentioned here is just the parents are involved. Right? A lot of the film comes from the parents, right? And I look at AYSO, which is a nonprofit. Most of that company, which it's probably a $50 million company. I don't know how big of a company it is, but it's mainly run by nonprofits. It's run by parents who want to give their kids a great experience. Well, at what point as a parent do you stop trying to give your kids great experiences? Like, when does that finish line happen?
Does it ever?
It doesn't ever happen.
Ever.
No.
Right? Never, ever.
No. So part of this program, it's a community program because we need the parents' help to, they help with rosters and numbers and photos, and because we don't care where the data comes from, but we do need to get the data from the game so that we can write the story.
If somebody wants, whether they're local and it's like, oh, that's going on here, I didn't know about it, or if they're in Nebraska and they want to learn about it, where do they go to find it?
CaliforniaRewind.org.
.org. That is awesome. Yep. That's so great. I really love that. Thanks for shining a light on it. That brings us to 2 other things, still in the sports and still in the impact sides. One is you're also an author. We said author, publisher, and this fits right in. Coach 'em way up. Talk about your why on this. I'm going to stop there. Why? Why the book Coach 'em way up?
Well, I wrote the book with a friend of mine that, I think coaching, whether it's in sports or in the workplace, is a higher calling. So most people I know, a coach is as important to them in their development as their mom and dad or anybody. I mean, everyone needs a coach, Mark. Right?
I'm the biggest believer and proponent of that, 100%.
Yeah, everyone needs a coach. I think it's impossible to hit your level without a coach.
As I always say, show me a pro athlete at the top of the top of the top that does not have a coach. Show me a business executive at the top of the top of the top that doesn't have a coach. I'm sure it happens sometimes. Typically, if you're a high achiever, you want to keep going, and you have a coach, right?
Yeah, there's no doubt.
And that's the premise here?
That is it. It really is. So Coach 'em way up, what we use is Coach Wooden, who is arguably the greatest coach of all time. I know people might want to object to that, but I always tell people, if you Google greatest coach of all time, there's a huge argument on number 2, but really number 1 is Coach John Wooden. So when you have someone that's as good as John Wooden was, and for those of you that are listening that don't know who John Wooden is, UCLA coach, but he's just at a class all on his own. There's 2 ways you could look at that. One is you could pick it apart and make excuses for why he was so great. You could say, well, times were different there, and that wouldn't work today because of this and that, and you can really audit him and pick it apart like you could anything. Or you could say, I wonder how he did that. How did he become that successful? And so this book really takes that lens and works backwards on how coach became coach and why he's important and what we can learn from him today, not just in the sports field, because coach will be the first to tell you that he's a teacher and he'd prefer to be called an English teacher.
Is that right?
He just happens that he's a very famous basketball coach, but coach is a life teacher. That's what he is. So he has this pyramid of success that's pretty darn famous. And the question is, what system are you using to become the best version of yourself? And if you don't have a system, the best system in the world, and I believe this, the best system in the world is the system that you're using. Okay? So this is a viable system. It's not better than other systems. I'm not saying it. Certainly tied for first, though. Do you have a system on how you become the best version of yourself? Okay, if you don't have one, this is a heck of a good one. Okay, but there's other ones just as good. But please
use one.
Use one. Use
Right.
a system.
Well,
That's right.
It's great.
That's
I love
right.
that. I love that. And I find it fun. You know, you're a USC guy, and you see, we live in a community of USC and some UCLA, and there's house divided here and there. But yeah, you can take. It doesn't matter. He could have been this coach anywhere. It just so happened to be at UCLA. But there's so much.
The Bruins put out a good one there. Yeah, we'll give that one to them. Yeah.
Well, listen, there's so many things about what you're talking about that I think reflect who you are and what's important to you. And the next piece of that is you're a super accomplished speaker. So can you talk about, so let me just back up. I was in Vistage, which is a CEO executive group. I was in Vistage for about 10 years, and we had speakers every month come in, people that are tops of their industry. They are thought leaders in whatever they do, and they're hyper vetted, and they're all graded. And we had, these are CEOs of big companies. These are super innovative people that are great public speakers that come and spend a couple hours in front of typically pretty high-end folks, executives and whatever they do. And that's you. And you've done something like 400 of these in the US and abroad. And I know that just because that was my world, you have like an average score out of 5 of like a 4.9 or 4.9 plus. It's incredible. Now, you never spoke to me when I was in that group, but just looking at it that way, pretty remarkable. You were doing that for a long time before I found out that you were doing it, and I was already out of Vistage at that time. Tell me about being a speaker. What got you in, and why, and just tell me about that whole experience for you.
Well, I have been on the Vistage circuit for over a dozen years, and then now I do a lot of private speaking. And I think I like it. No, I think I do. I mean, I got one this week.
I hope you like it.
Well, I got one this week, and it's going to be, all executives. And I'll let you know, when I have one in front of me, I'm like, okay, I got to do that on Thursday. And sometimes you don't, sometimes you look at that. A lot of prep goes into doing a good job, a lot of prep. But once you start doing it, you're like, this is why I do it. I really like it when I'm doing it, but there's just a lot of work that goes into doing it because you got to prep. You're doing podcasts. How much prep do you do for this podcast?
More than I ever thought.
That's right, because you want to honor your guest and you want to do a good
100%.
job. Well, that's why I'm speaking. So I think one of the reasons why I have such good scores, in particularly a Vistage environment where there's 10 to 20 CEOs in a room, and I'm supposed to teach them, is I have vigorously researched all of them. And I know a lot about them.
I had never thought of that angle. That never occurred to me. That's brilliant. I had never thought about that.
It's cheating, but it works.
No, that's knowing the rules of the game.
Yeah. Well, it's just prep. It's just prep.
Wow.
It just is, some people think that just comes so easy. You're such a good speaker. I'm not saying that. I'm like, well, actually, okay, thank you. I can say thank you to that, but I have researched every single person in the room, and they actually freak out how much I know about them, because then I customize the content to them.
Well, that's the beauty, because that's so smart, Jason. I've been in so many environments where there's a speaker that's talking to the room, but it has no bearing on me whatsoever. There's nothing relevant to my world. You can always glean stuff, but they're talking marketing this way, but I need this kind, and they're not touching on it. So they've never done that. That's my biggest takeaway from today. Like, That is brilliant.
Well, yeah, if you were in a group that I was speaking to and you were one of 15 people and you're easily researched, Mark Schuline, Ace Hardware, these are the places you operate, you like paddle boarding, things like that. I can find that all just by doing some series. So I might come up in this next session, I say this is all business to business. So Mark, if you want to work on your paddle boarding right now, that's fine. You can tune this part out, but I'm going to bring you back in a second because we're going to get into fourth quarter is really 5 quarters, as you know, in retail pretty soon. And I do that because I keep you engaged by doing that.
Oh, you personalize it. That's brilliant.
And then you give me credit for giving me your attention because I do think you feel like, well, if he's done that much research on me, I should definitely be giving him my attention. And it makes for a good evaluation at the end.
Well, listen, you can do all the homework in the world, but if you don't present well or provide real value, you can still get a shitty score.
Yeah, you can get a bad score.
For sure.
Yeah.
You really stuck me on that one. That's so smart. Does that work for all groups? Do you do that everywhere you go?
You have to. Yeah.
I think most people don't.
How would you do a good job?
I will never think about, like you've educated me right now. Like I will never think about going to speak to a group again without doing that type of research. But I promise you, there's most people don't. For sure, most people don't.
Yeah. There's something about prepping. There's something about preparation. I had a guy on my podcast who used to play for Coach Pete Carroll, and he said something that stuck with me. The separation is in the preparation.
Mm-hmm.
Right? The preparation is where you separate. So when you are giving a speech, you got to prep.
Well, this book, the second book, Battle of the Bay, which is the rivalry between Corona Del Mar High School and Newport Harbor High School. Before we were online, we were talking about Billy Whitford, who's been in here. He's the executive director of Newport Aquatic Center. He also played for Coach Ernie Johnson back in the in the 60s. But what he said was we out-prepared. They came out of nowhere. They won CIF. They beat everybody that year. He's like, we out-prepared them. He said, Ernie was the first one to video the other games. We studied everything we knew, everything they were going to do before they did it, which is common practice today. At that time, it was you showed up and you played, and that's the way it worked. Maybe somebody had watched, but they studied it. They out-prepared them, and that sounds like what you do.
That is true. And yes, Ernie Johnson was a generation ahead of his time, and they made a movie out of him.
Yeah.
Touchdown Newport. Yeah, and Billy is the executive director at the NAC and played on that 1969-1970 team. And by the way, great podcast with him.
Oh, thank you.
That was awesome.
Yeah, that was awesome.
Yeah.
That is so interesting.
But this book.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, you know what? We didn't go into that.
Yeah.
Tell us about that book, too.
Well, this book is called Battle of the Bay.
Let's hold this one up.
Yeah, Battle of the Bay. America's finest high school football rivalry. So this is part of our nonprofit funding mechanism. My friend Richard Dunn wrote this book, and Richard is just a prince of a guy and just been writing about sports for 30 years in the community.
There's that other one if anybody's interested in Coach 'em Way Up. 5 lessons for leading the John Wooden way. You still like to write, don't you?
I do like
Never
writing.
changed.
Well, I'm going to write it. Yeah, I'm in the middle of another one.
Oh, you are?
Most of them don't finish, but they're hard. It's hard to write books.
Well, you got a lot going on.
Yeah, it's hard to write them. It's hard to finish them. It's easy to start.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Well, you got 2. That's 2 more than most, right? Listen, Jason, all of this stuff, I think we've gleaned it. But if I said, can you encapsulate your motivation for all of these things? Kind of the question I think I mentioned earlier, like, are you a one-trick pony? Like, do you only have one way? Like, I do everything 100%, or it seems like once you have an idea, you pursue it, better or worse, and generally you finish. Maybe not always, but
I think they are intertwined. I think there's a lot of faith-based in all this. Loving your neighbor, I think is just the ability to make yourself as small as you can and serve others as large as you can. And then your ego shows up and you got to beat it down because you really didn't have anything to do with it. It's all these like blessings that you've been given, and you just got to keep that in perspective. But there's nothing better than serving people. And what could be a better day? I mean, you're going to wake up and think about yourself. That's really fun for like an hour. But yeah, if you really get in the habit of just knowing that there are a whole bunch of people out there that you could serve, and that's the common theme.
It's a great thing.
I think, yeah.
Thank you for sharing that. And I think in spades, you're doing that in so many different ways, which is great. And I love that it goes back. You can even see that from the mentors that you had. And so when I asked you, are you providing what Olga and Floyd did? I think the proof's in the pudding. And so kudos to you. Let me ask this. You've talked about some of your mentors and some of your role models. John Wooden certainly falls in there. The other side of this is the tools and tactics of elite performers, and I would put you right in there. You can't do all of these things well without a framework, right? And it sounds like you follow the John Wooden way. But you this morning, you mentioned to me what you do every morning. You have a routine, it sounds like. Talk about what your routine is, what you do during that time, and why.
Oh, so my routine in the morning is pretty straightforward. I get up with the sun, so I get up in the summer earlier than I get up in the winter. So I like the summers more because I get to get started.
I think we all do, yeah.
Yeah. I don't like going outside in the morning when it's pitch dark. So I do sometimes if I have to. But then I do this thing called my walk run. My kids will tell you the walk run. Sometimes one of them will go with me if they're home. And I just get up and I walk in the back bay, and you know it very well, this beautiful sunrise you get to see. And then there's a statue of a Marine that's at the corner of the Castaways, and just pay tribute to him really quick. My dad was a Marine, and walk down the hill, and then there's this big hill on cliff. So I'll run up and down that maybe 3 or 4 times. Not every day, but
that'll get your heart rate up.
Yeah, get my heart rate up. And then every now and then I'll see some of my friends on that same hill, and they're running it 10 times. And I'm still wondering how they do that. But like Jeff Reed, he's always like running up and down. He runs up and down. I run up and walk down. He runs up and whatever. And then I just cruise, and I walk through the high school. I get my cup of coffee, either at Pete's, which we got, or Keen,
Yep.
And then I go home, read a little devotional, take a shower. I'm ready for a great day. It's not very hard.
No, I'm not that it's hard, but it's a routine. But if you're by yourself on that, what are you doing? Are you listening to something? Are you thinking?
Mostly listening to a podcast or a book.
Yeah.
Yeah. Which is, interesting that we're here. The podcasting phenomenon is very real. So many people are on the go. Like just that morning walk, I'm on the go. I'll listen to a half dozen podcasts that I have, and every now and then I'll get a book out and I'll listen to a book. But I always have those earphones in, and you just kind of soak in the information based on what your appetite is that day.
Yeah.
I listen to yours sometimes.
Well, I appreciate it. You better say that while you're sitting here. But the reason I ask that is that, high performers typically have a path.
Yeah.
There's some consistency. There's habitual actions. I always say it that success leaves clues, right? So if you think about all the things that are talked about from like a health and wellness, and so there's exercise, there's nature, you're up with the sun, you are potentially seeing friends, you're getting your heart rate up, you are having some social, you are digesting different content. And the whole time, if you're like me, you're turning that thing on and off, you're making notes. And then by the time you get to work, you've already had a super creative pathway, and you've done all this stuff before you even start your day. So, the military says, make your bed in the morning. Why do you make your bed? It's not because you make your bed. It's so you have one accomplishment done. But when you've done all those things every morning, you've accomplished a ton, and you're now ready to go rock, right? And I think that so many people wonder how to start. Where do you start? If you're really trying to start something, you said start with a framework, any framework.
Any framework.
Get out and go for a walk and have a coffee and listen to something good, Be real careful what you listen to. Listen to good stuff that fills your brain, not the negative stuff that's gonna, there's, you said it's pretty simple, but there's so much magic that comes from doing that every day or a lot of the time. Right?
Yeah, there is. And there's a lot of resources to help people with that. I mean, one of the best books that I'm not the only person that's read it, but millions of people have read it, is Atomic Habits by James Clear. He talks about the cueing Because really what you're describing is, are you building good habits? Your system is a system. Your thoughts are your thoughts, but then your thoughts have to turn into actions, right? So you mentioned being healthy. Well, everyone can think about eating well and exercising. That is not hard to think that, but you got to turn that into an action, and you got to turn that into a habit. So whatever habit you're doing, the Atomic Habits is a really neat book to help people develop habits, and you just got to get started.
Yeah.
You got to get started, because most people can think about the right ways to do things, but who's doing it? Well, in this neighborhood, I think a lot. You're doing it. Your routine is probably in the ocean.
It's always I'm always doing something.
You're always doing something, and you're doing it early.
I am doing. I am not afraid of the dark.
Yeah, you're doing
it's the only time to get, for me, that's when I get it done.
Yeah.
But that's, but everybody has their thing. But I have again, if you can pack all those things together, you get your gratitude in there, you say, you go home, you get some faith stuff, like you're packing a ton of value, right? It's just like eating. Like if you eat really good stuff, you can have a donut later, no big deal. But if all you eat are donuts, you're in big trouble. So you can control what you can control. It's something we talk about at work all day long. I talk about with my kids, like you can't control everything, but you can control a lot. And when you control as much as you can, when tough stuff happens, you're better prepared for it, right?
Well, you better hope tough things happen, right? I haven't met a story yet that had all easy parables, right? Every great story you ever hear is because something tough happened. So that's part of just loving the competition, loving the challenge. While no one wants a hard thing to happen to them to do, like a disaster, nobody wants that. But if you think about most of the things that happened in your life that looked like they were really disasters, we talked about a couple of mine earlier, I don't know if you trade them in, because they're all part of what makes you.
Right. Well, that's what every pro athlete's going to talk about. Like,
there's no doubt.
What's the best athlete's rate of wins? It's well below 50% for their career typically.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So you have to be really good at losing. Right. Sales, you got to be really good at losing.
You better love it.
Right. You better love it.
Better love
it.
But
there's a big learning there, because it's not natural to love getting kicked in the face. Right.
No.
But it's part of the deal.
That's part of the deal.
Listen, Jason, final things for you. With all that you do, call it legacy, call it impact, what do you hope comes from all the stuff you're doing, whether it be at work and coaching, mentoring, whether it be with the kids, whether it be from the books, the speaking? If there was a magic wand, like what's the impact you hope you're having?
That's such a good question. I would say, I'll probably borrow from Coach here, if you don't mind, because he just says it so well. It's just peace of mind. Mm-hmm. If you think about that, peace of mind is just knowing that you gave everything that you had to the best of your ability, and whether there's wins and losses and successes and failures, but just the peace of mind of knowing that you left it all on the table. It's a great feeling. It's the knowing that it doesn't always turn out the way that you wanted or planned, but it turned out the way it should. Mm-hmm. It's just it's a warm spot. It's a huge faith component in that for me. Just knowing where I'm going, and that's a huge part for my own peace of mind.
Is that, if I was to ask you, from where you were in Tustin as a kid to where you are today, a lot of pivots and S-turns to get where you are. Did you ever see this coming? Would you change anything?
Would I? No. I think regrets are good. If you have no regrets, then you haven't done anything.
Or you're lying.
Right. So I think it's all part of what I'm supposed to be doing. Funny you say that. I have a group I meet with every Wednesday, a bunch of men, and the ask that I have, and I think a lot of the guys have, is, hey, God, where do you want me today? Like, where should I be? Right? That's a fun question.
That's a great one.
Yeah. Where do you want me? Show me where I'm supposed to be today. Who who would you like me to connect with? And you just hope it happens, because you don't know. You don't know.
That's awesome. Well, listen, I'm really grateful you connected with me. I think I'm very grateful that God said, hey, come to your own podcast studio and be on the opposite side of the mic today. Jason, where can people find out more about all the things? Is there a clearinghouse, or is it a good way to find, you have so many things going on. If people wanted to find out about Golden Comm, if they want to find out about, you already mentioned where to find the nonprofit. Let's talk with Golden Comm.
Yeah, I'd say my LinkedIn is the only place I have that would probably have
super smart
connections to all these different things. That's my only social media. I don't have a Twitter. I don't have an Instagram. I don't have a TikTok. I do have a LinkedIn.
And your podcast is called what?
The Golden Comm Podcast.
Got it. All right.
Find it on LinkedIn.
Like I said, everything is interlinked.
LinkedIn's
right?
the easiest place.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Listen, Jason, I'm really grateful you took the time. This was super interesting. And I'm guessing these guys even found out stuff about you that they didn't know. I certainly did. I'm really proud of everything you do. Kudos for what you do and how you do it and who you serve and how you serve, and for providing this resource for me.
No, Mark, it was our pleasure.
Super fun.
And we love having you here.
Yeah, well, I'm here a lot, so
Keep
thank you.
Yeah,
awesome.
Keep it up. You're doing
Jason
great
Lavin,
work.
thank you so much, buddy.
Brother.
Appreciate it.
Thank you, man. Appreciate it.